So Nard, we talked about speakers.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about moderators. What does it mean to be an EHiN moderator?
Okay, the moderators have actually a pretty important role because they glue together the session and they make kind of the overall theme for bringing the speakers together.
Okay.
They connect the audience and the speakers, and they're very important. They're kind of the ambassadors or the hero of the sessions, and they are really able to lift the session even higher and make more value for those who are listening to it.
I really like this idea of being the session ambassador or session hero. What does that mean for smaller sessions and for bigger sessions?
Okay, well, we have different sessions, so and not all the moderator roles are as important because we have some sessions where we have discussions or conversations between different speakers. And of course, there the role of the moderator is much more important because he or she is the one who is really asking the questions. And some other sessions, when it's about research or more project-based presentations, it might be the role of the moderator more like introducing the speakers and maybe asking them one or two questions in the end of the session.
Right.
We've got different kind of sessions, and we want also to be the EHiN to be more dynamic. So some moderators really take a big role also in advance, and they take contact with all the speakers and try to make them to adjust their presentations more to each other, while others are more like we wait and see what people bring because we trust that they can do a good job.
All right. Do you have any expectations yourself from the moderators?
Well, I hope, but it's not for everybody, but I hope they're really engaged and they're really interested in what they are presenting and that they're able to bring something more out of the presentations, which is probably about a project or something's going on, and the moderator can kind of bring that to a higher level, a meta level, and place that in a context which is bigger than just the presentation. And if there are more presentations in one session, that can be very interesting.
I'm happy you mentioned this red thread and the flow in the session, because that's probably the most important part of their job, isn't it, as a moderator?
Yeah, the flow is very important. I mean, to bring different pieces together. With EHiN, we try to make sessions about one theme or one subject. And sometimes that works better than other times, but we like to give the listener one piece of information which is balanced with different angles. So altogether they get a good idea about this subject and get different ideas from, as I said, different angles looking at it.
In the same session, yeah.
In the same session. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like potentially really engaging discussions between the speakers and the panel. How can a moderator manage that?
As we were talking about when we were talking about the speakers, is that EHiN is very much about bringing the tech revolution and the healthcare public sector together with a political vision. And for the moderator, it's important to see at these three angles and try to tell to the audience how they can place the presentations and what has been said there in the different perspectives.
So also creating a bit of context for
sure.
the audience.
Yeah, the context is very important.
Right. One thing I always try to help moderators bear in mind is that they need to set up a trust relationship with the speakers. And that's because everybody has their own objective. Like you say, there are three sectors involved. The speakers have their own objectives, that they have a message to get across. The audience has their own objectives. And the moderator, of course, has their role. So everybody needs to trust each other that their objectives are going to be fulfilled. And that can only be done if they talk to each other before the event. Does that happen a lot with EHiN? What's the...
Yeah, well, that's what we really
Yeah.
try to involve the moderators in advance, so they can contact the speakers and give them practical information, but also try to make them thinking about the different angles about the subject, because we like discussions or dialogues. We don't necessarily have to disagree about things, but we like to view things from different angles so people understand that it's not just about this, but this is a way to see it. And a moderator can be very important in that. Though not all moderators have the same role. Some will step in because they don't have the time in advance. Some sessions will be more about presentations, which are easier, more about knowledge and not about the big context. So, but,
yeah. It's good that you mentioned this point about sometimes interfering because of time running short, because in relation to trust, that's actually one thing they can agree in advance with the speakers. And what I mean specifically is just saying, okay, I will use this phrase. Now we're going to move on to the next speaker, for example, or some other cutoff phrase that everybody can agree with before the event. So then when it actually happens in real life, they won't be surprised when they hear it. So that's a good preparation point logistically.
Yeah, that could be. It is, of course, a moderator has to be just look after that things are finished within the time frame, and that everybody has asked the questions if they want to, and everybody got this gift and got a proper presentation.
Get in time for lunch.
In time for lunch, yeah, it's very important.
You don't want to compete with lunch.
No, you don't forget the beer after the
All right. What about preparing questions? You mentioned that before. Do they do that together with the speakers sometimes, or on their own? How does it work?
Well, you have different moderators, but what you can do is ask presentators to come with one or two questions which they might think are additional. Some other people like to do it when they're sitting there and find a question, especially when they hear several presentations after each other and they can connect them together. And there will be some sessions where the speakers will sit together and have a conversation, and then of course it is important that the moderator is engaged and has questions prepared. Though we also try to look at more digital solutions where the audience can come with questions and send them to the moderator.
All right. During the session?
During the session.
Okay.
And there are several digital solutions where you can get them on a screen and you can vote for them. We're not sure how much we're going to use them, if they're going to be disturbing or they're going to help to support the session. But we'll surely try to get some more of this dynamic influences into EHiN. Yes.
Yeah. What about questions that the speakers are not expecting, like some of the juicy questions that can get a bit of challenging atmosphere in the room?
I know, I've been a moderator myself quite some times, and sometimes I've asked questions which were really hitting out the person who was supposed to answer, and because were not prepared, and they're just sitting there and say yes or maybe, and then you understand as a moderator that was not the right question to ask.
So you shouldn't pursue it?
Well, you should ask, maybe it's a little bit depending. If you are talking to the Minister of Health, you can have clearly unexpected questions and try to push them a little bit. But if you have a speaker who is just presenting a project from their region, it's not very important to come with critical questions and try to push them hard.
Even these challenging questions can be said in a fun or friendly way, not hostile. So you don't want that kind of emotion in the room.
No, it's clearly that the moderators and the speakers are all here from their free will to help Norway and the rest of the world to come along with digital health. And even we want to have open discussions, and people do not have to agree or have just to be kind with each other, but we want them to respect each other and respect that they all have their own views. And
absolutely. And respect is also related to following the time limits.
Yeah, sure.
So that's all coming together.
Yes, I hope all the speakers know and are experienced enough to keep the frame limit and the time limit, and listen to the moderator if he or she is going to ask them to stop.
What about getting the audience involved? Does that happen in every session or not?
We try to, but it's also depending on what the content of the session is. We see that there are a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge about e-health, and if they have good questions, we really would like to draw them in. Sometimes you see that people from the audience want to tell their own story, and we rather would not have that, because you can do that later with your people.
In a coffee break.
Yeah, whatever. So, but yes, I mean, the time where presentation was just one way, where you got knowledge from a presentation, it's a little bit over. We want to have more dialogue. People get that the EHiN are well-trained, professional people who know what they talk about, who have their opinions, and a lot of them might have an additional little thing they can put to the presentation, which gives it more value.
Yeah. I was talking to one of the speakers I was working with recently, and she had been on a panel, and she was telling the story that it was the worst experience of her life because the moderator was asking very general questions and then simply passing the microphone down the panel so that every person on the panel could take a long turn to answer the same question 5 times. So for her, that was a really missed opportunity. How can we avoid that happens, that everybody takes a long turn and answers the same kind of question? Do they agree which speakers on the panel should answer which questions beforehand, or how does it work?
Well, you can do that, and you can. It's a little bit depending. We have some sessions which are on the main stage,
Right.
And there we really use a lot of time to prepare with the moderator. And really go through the whole, also as the speakers go through the whole scenario.
All right.
Because if people sitting together in a group and they have to answer questions and they have a dialogue, they really have to be prepared what they do. And then again, when you have a session which is mainly presentations of projects or research
So more like a workshop, practical
thing. Then it's more one way, and then it's then you don't have that dialogue. But I have to say, a lot of people know what they do. They have been at conferences a lot. They've given presentations before. So my idea is that in Norway the quality is pretty good. So
okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. You tell me your ideal moderator, and I tell you mine, and we see how we compare together.
The ideal moderator.
Yes.
I think she or he must be funny. Must be very awake and have a good appearance in the room. Try not to tell too much things which nobody wants to know. What the weather is and where the toilets are, and it's really engaging for the speakers.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, mine looks like someone who has gotten in touch with their speakers beforehand. I know this is something everybody mentions, but it's still in style to get in touch and know your speakers. And establish a trust relationship with them, and do things like we mentioned before, agreeing how long they're going to speak, what questions they're going to ask, if the situation comes to it, what kind of cutoff phrase is going to be used, and things like that. Definitely someone who involves the audience and asks for feedback from the audience and knows how to manage their emotions. So keeping an upbeat emotion in the room, starting and ending the session on a high so that people get enthusiastic about the topics. And maybe one last point would be someone who also follows up with the speakers, and maybe with the audience, but definitely with the speakers after the conference, and just say thank you, and if anybody has any questions for them or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one thing we maybe both missed out, that it should be a person who really knows about what the subject is about and is engaged in it.
Absolutely.
Is very important.
Yes.
As we've been talking also in the speaker video, that at the EHiN, even though we speak English, there will be a lot of Norwegian content.
Yes.
There might even be sessions which are both in English and Norwegian.
Right.
We prefer not to do that, but sometimes that happens. So we do this in English so everybody understands it, but a lot of the content in EHiN will be in Norwegian.